Welcome back. The New York Women's Foundation works to bring economic security to end gender based violence and provide health access and reproductive justice to all women and girls. With fierce determination, they mobilize hearts, minds, and resources to create an equitable and just future for New York City women, families, and communities. Here now joining me is the Senior Vice President Program of the New York Women's Foundation, Camille Emeagwali. Camille, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, can you talk a little bit more about the New York Women's Foundation and how, the organization has a unique philanthropic approach in engaging in early and trusting in women-led strategies? I'm curious to know, how does this approach contribute to the lasting change and progress within these communities as well?
Thanks for the question, and excited to be here and representing the New York Women's Foundation. We've been in existence since 1987, and in that time have partnered with so many hundreds of volunteers who've been a part of our participatory grant-making process, in which they partner with us to read proposals, engage in site visits, and be a part of the decision-making process for investing in grants in communities all throughout New York City and beyond. And we see this as the unique value that the New York Women's Foundation has, that we have close proximity to the communities that we invest in, but that we also engage women and girls and gender expansive people in our grant making process.
Now, what I think is so important, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is that the foundation emphasizes inclusivity, which is very important in this work because, as we all know, not every woman or gender expansive person goes through, the same experience, and we need to look at those experiences to adequately help and support these people. Can you share some specific examples of initiatives that showcase the commitment to diversity and inclusivity?
Absolutely. One of our signature investments is through our fund for girls, young women, and gender expansive youth of color. It's been a fund that's been in existence for close to 8 years. And it's been a fund that not only is inclusive of girls and young women, but those along the gender expansive spectrum, including gender non-binary, gender non-conforming. And when we also talk about women, we're talking not only cisgender women, but transgender women as well. We see the experience that women and those who've experienced oppression because of their gender as one in which we want to invest and support and promote their economic security, their health and their safety, and their healing and their justice and well-being.
Now, the foundation practices participatory grant making where guidance comes directly from communities. How does this approach empower local communities, and can you highlight a project that has particularly benefited from this model?
Absolutely. Participatory grant making is ingrained in the foundation of this organization. Since inception in 1987, we've employed this process where we have not only women from community, but women who also support the foundation, who are at the table to advance our thinking and thinking about how we can ensure that the mission, vision, and values of the foundation are advanced through our grant making. And so I would say, even from the early beginnings, through our early investment grant making strategy, where we seek to support small grassroots organizations with very small budgets that are really building their capacity and really at the beginning stages of advancing their work, this has been critical. Having folks from community be a part of that process has allowed us to select and invest in organizations that have become transformative in their community. And through a 5-year investment, they're then able to go on, grow, and be able to access funding from other funders because they've established a base of sustainability.
Now, the foundation manages several funding collaboratives. Could you elaborate on the impact of these collaboratives, such as the Justice Initiative and Collaborative Fund, and how do they address systemic issues?
Absolutely. One of the great things about having a collaborative fund is that it's not only the New York Women's Foundation that it's investing their grant dollars in supporting community-based organization, but we're also partnering with other foundations who are bringing their dollars to the foundation where we house and manage those dollars to invest collectively. And so it's an opportunity for us to partner with other funders to dig deeper and give more dollars to, in the case of Justice Fund, ending mass incarceration of women and girls. We also know that through the Justice Fund, we're able to support the women who are most impacted by the criminal justice and carceral system when they have loved ones who are incarcerated and are home and trying to continue to support their communities, support their families. And so through this Justice Fund, we're able to pool those dollars to give more money to organizations and leaders who are really seeking to have other solutions that don't include incarceration as the only way to address issues around justice in our community.
Now, the foundation also supported POW Her New York, contributing to significant policy wins related to equal pay. How does the foundation work with organizations to achieve tangible policy changes, and what is the broader impact on economic justice?
Well, what's incredible about so many of the organizations that we support, like PowHer, is that they recognize that it's not only around providing support services or direct services to women and communities, but they also recognize the transformation that advocacy can have on a local, state, and national level. PowHer has been an incredible force in New York State. And what they've done is build a network and community of women led organizations around the state to fight for paid leave, equal pay, fighting for advocacy and safety around gender based violence issues. Because we all know that all issues are gender issues, are women's issues. And so, what PowHer does is create this space to build power in community by building that network of organizations leading that fight. And so we recognize that while it is also important to provide those direct services and support that, we know that where systematic change happens is through advocacy on the policy, in policy on a state and local level.
Now, the organization also played a key role in funding the National Domestic Workers Alliance in its early stages. How has the organization evolved, and what lessons can be drawn from this success in organizing care workers?
So, again, another key example of an issue that impacts us all, but particularly women who are still in roles as caregivers, not only for children, but for elders in their life or a sick loved one in their life, where they're often in the position of providing care, as well as those who are operating in roles as care workers, who we know are primarily women, many of them immigrant women who are often working at lower wages and long hours. And so we've seen the transformation in having support and focusing on a Bill of Rights that supports care workers in their workspaces, but also outlining the needs of those who require support and making sure that they are getting what they need in those situations. So we see that as an example that can be offered in a variety of different issue areas where there's a collective action that takes place and folks are moving forward through advocacy. And the role that philanthropy can play in investing in those leaders and those movements that are happening and moving forward.
Now, something that you mentioned that I want to highlight is you briefly mentioned women from immigrant backgrounds. And, throughout the conversation, we talked about, how there have been initiatives or funds for young girls and women of color. Can you talk about the importance of intersectionality in a lot of the work that the organization does? Because I think that for a lot of women of color or girls of color, sometimes when we hear just anything for women, sometimes we have an automatic image in our head, and sometimes that image doesn't include us or what we look like. So can you talk about the importance of intersectionality and how your organization strives to kind of make sure that they're upholding that idea and kind of like including others in their work?
Great question. I think when we think about a woman's life, it is not just centered on their gender, but all facets of their identity that intersect and that may create opportunities or, in some cases, barriers to their advancement that may impact their health and, in some cases, may impact their safety. And so, when we think about a woman and all of the identities that she holds, whether it's race or ethnicity, immigration status, age, disability, those are things that we take into account and recognize that can impact a woman's ability to be secure, to be able to support her health and well being. And so when we are putting out resources to communities, we are taking that into account. And so many of the organizations, I would say close to 80% of the groups that we fund are either led by or supporting communities that are women of color, immigrant women, because quite frankly, that's the reality of New York City, that there's a plethora of diversity of the experiences that they hold that impact their lives. So, what the New York Women's Foundation does is take that into account and understand how that impacts the needs, life experiences, and the resources and supports, and quite frankly, the solutions that can support them in their economic security and their overall well-being.
And I like that you said solutions, because I think that ideally we want to, although in a perfect world you would love to solve every problem, unfortunately that isn't the reality. That it is solution based and oriented, and not keeping marginalized communities kind of on a hamster wheel of trying to, maybe just get what they can for now and then kind of have to repeat. And so I think that is so important, and I'm really glad that we were able to have this conversation. Now, what I really want to know is how does the organization find other organizations, maybe local based organizations to kind of collaborate with? And what is some of the things that you look for?
Excellent question. So, we are an organization that has great proximity to the ground. We know that problems and solutions exist in the same place. So, we're often looking on a local, community, neighborhood level for organizations that should be in our portfolio. Oftentimes, our existing grantee partners are connecting us to leaders and organizations that also need additional support. We have a legacy of over 37 years of being early investors and catalytic investors in small community-based organizations. We do also have an open and transparent process where we have a plethora of ways that we are going into community and partnering with other small organizations to make sure that the word is out about the resources that are available. What we're looking for are women and gender expansive led organizations, organizations that are close to the ground and have great proximity to community, and organizations that need the kinds of support that the foundation has that can be transformative. We want to invest in organizational sustainability, the leadership of the organization, and so that they have access to not only our grant dollars, but amplifying their work through our communications channels, connecting them with other funders, and giving them the platform to get to the next level, which could be just even growing the work that they do, scaling that, or simply just getting better at what they do. And so we look for all opportunities to be in proximity with community because we recognize that the partnership that we can offer can advance them in manifesting the mission that they have for community change.
I also want to highlight that the foundation also works with community organizations that support people or women with disabilities, because I think that is also very important when we're talking about representation and inclusivity. Can you just talk about how the foundation champions pretty much that cause and promotes disability inclusion within their philanthropy?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to your question around intersectionality. We understand that women and gender expansive people also may have disability as part of who they are and a part of their identity and impacting their lives in every different way, whether through employment or access to services, health, and other resources that they need. And so the foundation has been deepening in its investment in disability, particularly by investing in women's leadership, investing most recently in a landscape scan report that we did that examined what are the needs of young women of color here in New York State around disability justice issues. And through that have been able to grow our investments in support to people with disabilities on a range of disabilities, from physical disabilities, mental health disabilities, most recently long COVID, and really discovered that our work is investing in the leaders of these movements who want support to really bring the needs of people with disabilities to the forefront. We're also part of a table with other funders who are also growing their investment in this work as well. And I think what we bring to this issue is thinking not only about people with disabilities, but women with disabilities, women of color with disabilities, and all of the added issues or needs or life experiences that should be taken into account when we're investing more deeply in transforming the systems that impact their ability to thrive.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And these are things that I love to hear because I think it's showing that as a society we are evolving and kind of listening to the stories of other people and understanding what their needs may be, and how, as women and people, we're very complex and we have different identities. So I love to hear that. Now, what are some future goals and aspirations for the foundation?
The foundation is really excited to continue to deepen its investment in women and girls in a variety of areas, but most importantly this year in civic engagement and strengthening democracy. We know that 2024 will be a transformational year as it relates to a national election that may have implications on a state and local level. So we want to make sure that folks are engaged, they're getting out to vote, they're thinking about running for office. Women and girls should be in roles of leadership and engaged in political and civic life. We also know that it's still trying times as it relates to the economic security needs of women and girls. And so we're continuing to invest on a local level, both particularly in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, and investing in leaders who are at the forefront of economic and climate justice issues. And so those issues are at the forefront of our investments. And we hope to partner with other organizations throughout New York City and state who are seeking to advance that for women and girls as well.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about the work that the foundation does. We only got to talk about it a little bit, but I'm sure there's so much more that the organization does. So, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and educate our community.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Look forward to doing it again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
We have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.